And thank you, Joe Beth. The other side of that, of course, is what is happening with the Democratic Party. To break down that strategy, we're talking to Kevin Walling, the Democratic strategist who's advised the Democratic National Committee as well as congressional campaigns. Thank you for being here, Kevin, once again. Now, what is the strategy if Dems control the White House and the House, but not the Senate, for getting legislation passed?
Yeah, Tabitha, good morning. I think, the best outcome is to have Joe Biden in the White House, who has a storied career, 40 years in the United States Senate, working across party lines to pass the Violence Against Women Act, to pass major landmark legislation among, the ADA, other legislation in the past. And he's really best suited, I think, to reach across the party aisle and to actually get things done with the United States Senate in Republican control. And Speaker Pelosi in control in the United States House of Representatives.
Kevin, what is the strategy when it comes to the lawsuits talking about the ballot counting, not only in Pennsylvania, but something that we could also see pop up in other states as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think, you saw Joe Biden's team in the lead up to this election set aside, tens of millions of dollars to a legal fund, hire the best legal minds when it comes to election law on the Democratic side. To beef up their teams in some of these key battleground states, anticipating that Donald Trump, who spoke at length about his need to get a new justice on the Supreme Court so that he could rule, so that she could rule in his favor. I think the Biden campaign certainly anticipated that this might be headed to the courts, and they certainly stand ready to fight back any of these attempts to throw out ballots, to stop counting in some of these states, and to make sure that every American's voice is heard as part of this process.
Can we take a moment to focus on Georgia and what the strategy is there for those Senate races? Now, we know one is going to a runoff in January, possibly both, but what's the Dem strategy?
Yeah, this is going to actually come down, I think, to control of the United States Senate. These two key Senate seats in Georgia. Certainly, I think that's going to have a lot of attention on the Democratic side and certainly on the Republican side if it becomes a 50-50 Senate, if those two races go to the Democrats, which is likely to be the case right now heading into these final runoffs. It's right now at 48-48 with a tiebreaker being Kamala Harris as vice president. So certainly a lot of attention will be on those races. If the vice president wins Georgia, I think that's going to be a strong indication that we can really play strongly in the state of Georgia, a state that hasn't gone to the Democrats since Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton, so 30 years plus that we haven't seen Georgia flip to the Democrats. So it's all about a changing map that we're seeing and Democrats being competitive across the Deep South.
Looking at this election, I'm curious, where do you think Democrats missed the mark in appealing to voters, but where do you think there was also success?
Yeah, Tabitha, I think there was a great amount of success if you look at the numbers from 2016 to 2020 in terms of really mobilizing people of color in this country. They, as a Democrat, have saved us once again in terms of the numbers that we're seeing out of Philadelphia, out of Milwaukee, out of Detroit, those three key states that we needed to flip back as part of that blue wall. So I think, Democrats have taken nothing for granted, going to those cities, going to those suburban areas, really motivating folks to turn out. Numbers that we didn't see in 2016, and that unfortunately brought, I think, Secretary Clinton's campaign down. So really excited to see that. I think also, too, young people got engaged. Exit polling shows that the vice president won millennial voters anywhere between 30 and 40%. That's a huge margin for Democrats going forward, and certainly something that we need to really base our support on going forward, because millennials will one day be elected to Congress. A lot of young folks got elected to Congress this cycle, and they're not just the present of this electorate, but the future. So that's certainly encouraging. I think Democrats missed the mark in terms of some communities in Florida around people of color, the Latinx community. Down in Florida, we lost 2 congressional districts in the Miami-Dade region, which is certainly disappointing. And again, that's a wake-up call, I think, to Democrats to say we can't take anything for granted, and we really need to mobilize in these communities and not just show up every 4 years, every 2 years, but really build a bench of support in some of these communities going forward.
Kevin, thank you for your time. We'll check back in with you in just a little bit.
Thanks, Tabitha.